The Ukrainian government. It says its military is now in control of a city that has been a rebel stronghold. Pro-Russian fighters are said to be abandoning their positions in Sloviansk. The city has been the scene of some of the fiercest resistance to government troops. The rebels are said to be regrouping in other cities, but even with the continued fighting, President Poroshenko is indicating he's willing to hold more talks with the separatists, and he's willing to give Russia a seat at the table. Now, Russia's President Vladimir Putin is talking truce, but he faces increasing pressure from nationalists in his own country who want to send troops to support the Russian-speaking insurgents in Ukraine. Well, but Russian military intervention would incur more sanctions from the West, of course. To discuss this tangle of competing interests, we have Steve Acunto, Chancellor of Consular Corps College. And I got to ask you, welcome, has Putin met his match in Poroshenko?
I suppose it's a natural thing to try to make a metaphor of boxing or sports. In fact, what's happened, in my view, is the game of checkers has become a game of chess. In a sense, he has met a match. They're equally popular, each in his own country. Poroshenko's a determined man. He has been able to change the equation by adding allies. So I think he may very well have met something of a match. Certainly, you could say a heavyweight, an established heavyweight champion, and a very strong contender.
And that I would have been a contender. He's already there.
Right.
Here's my question, though. I mean,
Sure.
you know, there's certainly it's going up from a little checkers game to a chess game here. But has Putin already achieved his objectives? What I mean by this, does anybody think that Putin now would actually send troops into eastern Ukraine, even at the behest of some of his supporters?
Julian, I think he could only lose. I don't think he could gain by that. However, you can't underestimate the subliminal goal, the underlying goal of a restored pride and a restored USSR, which is on the agenda. That's undeniable. You know, history teaches us after Versailles that a people who experience a dissociation of their own sensibility wind up trying to come together. So I don't think we can underestimate his motive, yet the particular expression of that will not be, I don't think, in the Ukraine with troops.
Well, Steve, I guess the question is, who does Ukraine need the most? I mean, they're a country on the verge of bankruptcy here. They have issue with gas, power, those kinds of things. Would their allegiance be more likely to line up with Putin or with the West?
Julian, I think the only conceivably good answer there is they have to have a game-changing formula which makes them part of a system outside of Russia. So therefore, it's likely that this new alliance between Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, led by Ukraine, will expand, and they'll expand toward the West.
In terms of money, the West has recognized and said the need to pour money into the Ukraine. How much money would have to go in there? I mean, you're not an economist necessarily, but in terms of the amount of money that the West would have to pour into to gain that influence over, say, the resources, the natural resources and gas that Russia has, where is the balancing point between those two?
The only answer I can't give a number to you. I mean, obviously, it would be an astronomical single number. But there has to be a continuum of support because this will not resolve itself quickly. The underlying forces of independence on the one hand and of hegemony on the other on Russia's part will not be resolved quickly. Whatever commitment needs to be structured over a long period of time if the West is going to support Ukraine. I want to make a point.
Sure.
There's one more factor, Julian, that came to bear this week, and that is the death of the patriarch Vladimir. The patriarch Vladimir was a conciliatory priest in Russia who argued for the unification, or not the unification literally, but the spiritual unification of the two countries, because there are two separate ways, two separate churches, if you will, allegiant, one to Kiev, one to Moscow. That takes away a religious help which would have been able to support the success of these talks and mollify the problem.
We've got two sides here. We've got diplomacy, we've got military force. The last person, we've got less than a minute left, Steve. Where does Barack Obama, the United States, fall into this picture? How much influence do they have?
Well, you know, there's an old expression in Latin, who is silent agrees. The president has been passive. President Obama has been passive, in my opinion. But I think his silence betokens agreement with Petroshenko. And I believe that is something that the Ukraine can bank on. I don't think his silence is agreement with Putin.
Well, we'll have to wait and see on that. There's still that tension there that's going on between, of course, Ukraine and Russia. And, of course, you said this is no longer a checkers match. It is a chess match now.
It's a chess match.
And we'll see exactly who wins this particular match.
Kings, queens, and pawns.
Checkmate. Steve Acunto, thank you so much,
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.